What's up guys? Today we're going to learn how to budget. Now you may have tried budgeting in the past, but it often feels boring and restrictive, or maybe you tried somebody else's and it just didn't work. But that's because you need to customize it to yourself. A budget should line up with your lifestyle and be flexible because your life is going to change and so does your budget. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I have two main principles that you can follow. That way it can keep it flexible, but also rigid enough to be successful. So let's start with principle number one, which is spend less than you earn. And I know that sounds very obvious, but a budget truly doesn't work if you are spending more than what's coming into your bank account. And the more you're aware of what you spend, the more you're actually going to save. First off, we're going to find a way to track our net worth over time. That way we can see how our decision making is affecting our money. I do my budget every month or two just so I can track my expenses and make sure they're in line with what I've set out in the first place. Right? Again, because a budget is going to be a plan for your money. You're not waiting around to see where your money ends up, but you're actually directing it to go somewhere. And that way you can track if you're going overboard in a certain area or if you have room to spend in another area. I'm not going to be incredibly strict down to the penny anymore because I don't really need to. But when you're starting out, it definitely helps. And I certainly had to do that when I first started. And this can be helpful when you're starting out because you may not always be at the income level that you want to be. And so if you want your budget to have a big gap to where you can save and invest, instead of increasing your income, what you can do is cut out some expenses that you don't really need to be spending on in the first place. So the first way to do this is to track everything that comes into your bank account and goes out of your bank account. And you can do this in Excel, you can do it in an app, you can do it with pen and paper if you want. The main point is that you know where it comes from and where it goes. Later on in this video, I'm going to do an Excel budget with you that we'll go over live, but for now let's look at some other options. So first up is the classic pen and paper. Now the first time I did this was when I got my paycheck from Chick-fil-A when I was 16 years old, and I got paid something like $260. And what I did was flip around the paycheck on the back, and I wrote out what my income was, and then I wrote out all of my expenses down on the list. Then I subtracted everything, and what was left over, that's what I put into savings. And doing this helped me understand how money works, where it goes, and how I can control all of that. Next up is Microsoft Excel. Now you can do this because Excel helps you calculate things automatically, and so you don't have to do math manually if you're lazy like me. That's the way I prefer it. So in Excel, you can create two different columns. One on the left is going to be your income and all of your expenses listed out. And then on the right is going to be the actual money amount. And then you can just subtract the income from the sum of all of your expenses. And at the bottom, you should have a number left over. And again, that's going to go right to savings because we don't want to waste any extra money left over. And the best part about Excel is that you can reuse this over and over again because you're going to want to budget more than just a single time. And so what you can do is duplicate sheets to have one for each month, or copy the entire file and do that every single month. Really doesn't matter. The point is that you can reuse it and it helps you do this in a little bit more of an efficient way. Next up, you could check your bank account to see if they offer a way to budget your money in the actual app itself. So for mine personally, it's not automated, so I have to go in there and select each expense and put that into a certain category, and then I can see in total what I spent that month. One good thing about this process not being automated is that it actually forces me to look at what I'm spending for each and every single item, and then I get really familiar with my habits and I can decide if I like them or not. And lastly, we have budgeting apps. This approach is my personal favorite, and I loved when Intuit still had Mint around because it was the best budgeting app out there and it was free, but those losers got rid of it, so now we got to deal with some other ones. So let's take a look at a couple options for budgeting apps. And by the way, I'm not sponsored by these, nor do I use them, but they're options. So first up, we have Every Dollar by Ramsey Solutions. Now this is a good one because it forces you to put every single dollar that you earn into a specific category, so nothing is left over at the end of the month. And that way you're a bit more intentional with everything that you're spending. They have a free version, but it's not that great. The premium version can be a little pricey, so keep that in mind. Next up, we have You Need a Budget, and this is similar to Ramsey Solutions. It allows you to put every single dollar into a certain category so that you're not missing out, and it's also $15 a month if you want to use this, so just be aware of that. Next up, we have Good Budget, and this one is based on the envelope system. If you've heard of this before, the basic idea is to take all of your cash at the beginning of the month, put it into envelopes based on certain categories that you want to spend, and then once that cash is gone, you don't get to spend anymore. So this is simply an online version of the envelope system, and they have a free version with limited number of envelopes, but they also have a paid version that's $10 a month. And the last one is called Honeydew. This one is good if you have a partner and you want to have both people tracking the same bank account. You can link your bank account, it automatically categorizes everything for you, and you can set alerts if you go over budget in a certain area. Oh, and the whole thing's free, so this one might be a pretty good option for you. Principle number two. Make the budget work for you, not the other way around. If you're so strict that you're not actually going to stick to your budget, it's not going to work in the long run. Just like a diet or exercise program, if you hate it, you're probably going to do it for a little bit, but your willpower runs out. And so rather than relying on willpower, why don't you adjust it to where it actually fits your lifestyle and you enjoy doing it? And like I said before, don't copy somebody else's budget because again, it's not going to work for your lifestyle. For example, my wife and I have $25 a month to go spend at coffee shops because she loves coffee. Now we're not spending $7 a day on a Starbucks coffee and wasting a bunch of money. money, but we do set aside enough to do something that she likes. So it's about finding balance and making your budget work for your life. So let's do a live budget with the average individual income versus the average individual expenses and see how it turns out. So we're going to start with income, and according to SoFi.com, the median annual income in the USA is $63,795. But we're going to do after tax because that's what we see actually hit our bank account. And so that's going to be about $50,000. And so monthly income is going to be $4,166. So that's our starting point for this budget. And when you go through a budget, it's a good idea to underestimate your income and overestimate your expenses because you want to leave some wiggle room and build a margin of safety for yourself. So the first things first, we're going to start with savings because we always want to make sure that we get paid first. Our bills come second to our livelihood. We want to pay ourselves so that we actually can build a future rather than worrying about living paycheck to paycheck. So we're going to start with savings, and we're going to do a 10% minimum. Now we're going to start with 10% and see if we have anything left over at the end to add to this because we want to pile on the savings until we have a full 6-month emergency fund. Now again, 10% is good to start, but let's try to see if we can get some wiggle room and add to that towards the end. Next up, we have the average monthly rent as of August 2024 is about $1,536. But again, we want to overestimate our expenses a little bit. Let's just round that up to $1,600 to be safe. We're going to use the average monthly car payment, and that is $520 for a used car and $730 for a new car. Let's just go with the used car in this scenario because I hope most of you are not buying new cars. Next up, we have monthly grocery bill. This goes from about $230 to about $430. We're gonna go on the higher side and say we're spending $400 for groceries, and then we're gonna add in $50 per month for eating at restaurants. So that's $450 for our food each month. Now, according to RamseySolutions.com, the average monthly insurance payment is $456. But if you have an employee-sponsored policy, it's probably gonna be about $111 on average. And since we're working with an average salary about $63,000, I'm gonna assume most of you have an employer-sponsored plan. Let's choose the $111 for now. The average car insurance payment each month ranges from $53 to $194, but we're gonna go with the full coverage based on the insane $520 car payment that we're currently making. So let's choose $194 for this section. And then we're gonna look at our average monthly phone bill, which is $70. Now the rest of these are a little bit more subjective than our other bills. So I'm gonna pick some reasonable numbers based on experience and some averages. The gas bill for our car, let's just say it's $150 per month. Next up, we have Wi-Fi. We're gonna put $50 a month. Utilities is gonna be $250, and we're just gonna call this gas, electric, and water. Let's just combine all three and say $250. Miscellaneous, we're gonna put $200 because something always comes up every single month. You're gonna wanna have a miscellaneous section here. Entertainment and clothing, I'm combining these because I'm assuming that bills are pretty tight right now and we don't have a lot of room for disposable income, so let's put $100. And at the end, we're left over with $54, which isn't bad, but it's cutting it pretty close. We're gonna add that back to our savings and it'll boost it just a little bit. So if you're starting to learn how to budget, 10% is great, like I mentioned earlier, especially when you compare it to the national savings rate of 3.5%, but I know we can make some adjustments looking at this budget already. Again, our goal is to make our budget fit our lifestyle, but we can also adjust our lifestyle a little bit that'll be more beneficial for us in the long run. That way we don't feel like we're constantly scraping to get by. So the bigger the gap between what we earn and what we keep, the faster we can use our money to our advantage and have it build us wealth while we're sleeping. Let's see what adjustments we can make here. The first thing I would look at is the two biggest payments towards the top, which is our rent and our car payment. Now, first of all, if you're paying rent for a small apartment, you probably shouldn't be buying a car that requires a $520 payment per month. That's an insane amount of money to put into something that only loses its value. Instead, what we're gonna do is sell that car and buy something reliable. And you can absolutely find a decent Honda or a Toyota for something around $8,000, and that's gonna free up an additional 12% in your budget immediately, and you should have some money left over from selling the car to put into savings. And already that's a huge win. Next up, we're gonna look at our rent. Now, $1,600 for a single person is a pretty heavy toll to pay for a small apartment, but you can certainly find a roommate to split a bigger apartment for less money. And even if it's something like $2,000 per month, if you split that between two people, you're paying $600 less than you are currently in a single bedroom apartment. And you might even be saving a little bit more because you'll also be splitting the utilities. But let's just say you get a roommate and rent goes up to $2,000 because your apartment's a little bit bigger. Now it's only $1,000 on your part, so you get another huge chunk of money back to work with. So now that we've swapped the 10% savings rate to a massive 38%, we have monthly expenses around $2,600. You can save up a full 6-month emergency fund in about 10 months. So that's less than a year and you have a full emergency fund to fall back on, and you can finally dump all of that extra money into investments. And of course, this was just an example, but I did try to be as realistic as possible by looking up all the stats online for what are average income and average payments for a single person in 2024. So this is what I would do if I made $50,000 per year after after tax. You have to be willing to sacrifice a few things that a lot of people probably wouldn't want to do, like getting a roommate or getting rid of the nice car that you like driving. In the long run, it's worth it because you're going to be able to build a lot of wealth really quickly from a younger age. So there you have it. Those are the two main principles that you need to build a good budget. I'm going to leave the exact same Excel spreadsheet in the description below so you can download that for free. And again, it's not going to be anything fancy, but that's the whole point. The whole point is that you just get started. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to leave a comment to let me know what you want to see next. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. This is just a digital version. It's pointless. And of course, this is... Dude, be sure to like and subscribe,